Wrike is a project management system that aligns our team with client needs and the university's strategic goals. Wrike is used by Marcom to receive project requests from university staff and faculty. The Marcom team ensures excellent customer service and aims to deliver within 10 business days. So every single project that gets submitted through the Marcom request form will funnel into the OSMC space, and more specifically into our project request folder. You'll notice that there isn't a whole lot in here, and that each and every project that you see in this folder is going to be in one of two statuses, and that is on hold or new. And that is because these projects need approval from both Oliver and the operations team before we move them into in progress status, which means that it's been approved and we have the proper resources to allocate to that project to ensure that we are able to not only meet expectations but exceed expectations. So you'll see that this is the only one that's in new. This is the request that we just submitted. And so if we go into this project, you'll see that it has pulled in all of the information that we filled out in the Marcom request form. This is an awareness campaign. We'd like web support. We need edits to laverne.edu, and our deadline is the 12th. You'll also notice that this deadline is indicated here in the due date. We also need a start date, which is going to be today, the 9th. And we're also going to indicate our due date. We want to make sure that every single project has both a start and end date so that we can run our reports effectively. And then you'll also see when we go to full details that we have a blueprint template that was pulled in here. So all of our tasks are already outlined for us. We just need to assign an individual to these tasks. I'm going to assign myself so as to not alarm anybody. And we also need to set the due dates here. At a higher level, the operations team is also paying close attention to our custom fields, which are outlined here at the project level. And so these are really important because we got rid of some extra folders that we had in our structure before, and we recalibrated them to these custom fields. And the reason being is because when we spoke with our Wrike consultant, they outlined it very clearly for us that folders are for finding and custom fields are for reporting. And so for our purposes, those folders existed for reporting. And so we just thought, this is cleaner. This is a better way for us to track our efforts. And so we have strategic goals that are outlined here. We always want to make sure that every single one of our projects that make it to the active status folder has one of these 3 R's attached to it. So recruitment, retention, or reputation. If the project does not fall into one of these categories, we're going to have to seriously consider whether or not it is worth our time and effort and resources to approve that project and move it through, because with how busy our team gets, we want to make sure that we're moving the needle for the university in some way. And so we want to make sure that we're tying everything that we do back to these 3 R's. And if not, we need to make sure that we're all aligned on why we're doing it and what the end goal is. So we'll put retention here. We also want to identify who the strategic partner is, and these have all been identified. We use acronyms for these, but there is also a Wrike acronym sheet that I can share with you if you ever have questions on this. But essentially, the operations team will always fill this out. If you ever notice that this is not filled out, please let somebody on the operations team know and we'll take care of it. And then lastly, we have the team who is going to work on this. So more often than not, you're going to see multiple team tags at the project level. But once we get to tasks, these are usually going to have just one team assigned to them. So like, for instance, for collecting content updates from the client, I know that the operations team takes care of that. And then when we have the content updates from the client, the digital team will make the content updates. And then lastly, send to client for review is always going to be the operations team. This allows us to free up resources. So for example, although I know the digital team is more than capable of sending an email, by identifying that the operations team is going to be the one to send to the client for review, that frees up some time in our digital team's day to work on project-based deliverables. And that can be indicated here with our timer. So depending on how long it takes, for example, the digital team, right, to make those content updates, they can start and stop this timer to accurately reflect the time that they spent making these updates for whatever client is requesting them. But even past just a time entry, we also have categories here. So this would fall under project-based deliverables because the request was for us to make a content update, and the time that was spent making that content update. But for example, here, collecting the content updates from a client for the marketing and operations team, this time entry would probably fall under administrative work, if not meetings. If it's a meeting, we actually need to sit down and ask some clarifying questions, then we would identify it here. But if it was something as simple as I just reviewed the attachments that were in the actual request itself, we have all the pieces that we need, then we would just identify that as administrative work and submit our time entry. Please make sure to always hit add entry as well, because if not, it is not counting towards your time card. And that's pretty much it as far as the build out goes. So once these are approved, like I said, at the project level, the status will be moved into in progress, and the actual project will be moved into active projects. So now I'm going to go over the active projects folder, which is the second folder here. When you click in here, you will see that everything in this active projects folder is in progress. They're all at various stages of progress. So you can click in here and you'll see that even though the project is in progress, some of the tasks are in the new status. And that's totally normal because as we work through the tasks, we get closer and closer to completion. And as we complete projects, then they actually get moved out of the active project folder and get moved into our archived projects folder. We have this folder for reporting purposes. Also, if we ever need to revisit a canceled project for whatever reason, we can. And we can also take a look at, okay, why was this canceled? Has a new request that's very similar to this come in? Should we just maybe revive this old one because we have the information needed here? We sometimes also will utilize archived projects to rebuild projects. So if there are similar projects, for instance, we had the NCRF Black College Expo that happened back in February of 2024. And we now have a new project that is going to be very similar in September. And so do we utilize that project build out to just duplicate it and not recreate the wheel? These are options that are made available to us by saving our completed projects in an archive projects folder. We're also able to measure how many projects we've completed per strategic partners. So for example, HR being a strategic partner, with these tags that we've created, right, for strategic partner, I can now go into our dashboards and pull how many hours did we spend in 2023 and 2024 on deliverables for HR, for example, or even getting more granular, I could pull how many hours we spent on those deliverables, just depending on how granular we want to get. And very similarly, we could do that for strategic goals as well. The last folder that I'll go over here is the fourth folder, Supervisors Reports. If you come in here, you will see that this is a repository of all completed reports going all the way back to January of 2024. If you ever need to revisit something that you've submitted previously, please feel free to access this here. As you can see, we have little arrows here. This basically indicates that it's a recurrent task. So every Wednesday at 9 a.m., a new supervisor report task is going to be created automatically, and our operations team builds that out with a new link to a shareable document where everyone submits their latest updates, and then that gets printed out for Oliver, but it'll also live here digitally for everyone to access. And that's essentially it. That is our OSMC space. All right, so now on this left-hand side of your screen, you have a couple different resources and tools that can be really helpful in helping you to prioritize what you should be doing for the day. And so namely, we have My To Do. This is a really good resource to basically take a peek in at everything that is assigned to you, and it organizes it in such a way that really helps you to prioritize what you need to do first. So as you can see here, it tells you first what is overdue, and you should always prioritize these first. If something's overdue, we need to do everything we can to get them across to the finish line. And so it's really great that it kind of outlines that for you up top. The next thing that is outlined for you is what's due today. So again, just really helpful in keeping yourself organized tomorrow, and then this month and later. Obviously, if you're caught up on everything, you might just have today, tomorrow, and then later. But like I said, we should always prioritize those tasks that are overdue. You also have your inbox over here, and essentially this will show you anything that you have been mentioned in, whether it be by the Wrike bot, so all the necessary task dependencies have been completed, notes like that, or if it's from one of your teammates. So for example, hi Sasha, here's the final print files. And if you click into these, it'll take you to that actual task where you were mentioned, and you can communicate back and forth in the comments with your colleagues. You can also search things that you have sent. So if you are trying to track something down and you, for whatever reason, can't remember the title of the task, or you're like, oh, it was something that I had mentioned Sasha on, and so I'm gonna look in my sent messages. This could also be really helpful in tracking things down. And then you have your archive as well. And then lastly, you have this more drop down, so you can access your timesheets from here, you can build reports from here, you can build calendars from here. Basically with Wrike, there are a lot of different ways to do the same thing, to organize the same information. And so these can be really helpful, but if you ever need help building out a calendar or a report, please feel free to have that discussion with the operations team, and we can help to get you what you need.